Welcome to the Northernlights Podcast, where we talk all things MMA. I'm your host, Dwain, and I'm joined, as always, by Mark. Today, we're going to talk about double champions, UFC Austin, and question whether Alex Pereira is the new GOAT or is he heading up a cursed division. But before we get into that, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as we have brand new episodes every single week. So, Mark, UFC Austin was quite a wild night. We had two big slam KOs back to back, and I think I picked almost every single fight wrong on this card. What you saw of the fight night, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, we've spoke before about this is one of those where you look and you think, oh, actually, this is pretty tasty. This is quite juicy. I was surprised to see someone like, say, Davison Figueiredo being that further down, pushed down the card, considering his history. But like you say, though, it definitely delivered. Don't get me wrong, if I'd have stayed up for it, maybe I'd have been a bit miffed with how short some of the fights were, but fantastic overall, though. And it's not out of the ordinary for you to get every single pick wrong, by the way, Dwain.
You're talking about, I've got 100% pick rate, even on the UFC Austin, yeah? I've never got anything wrong, ever, okay?
Yeah,
the
all right.
exact round, the method, yeah? Call me Mr. Sunnan for predictions. But anyway, a pick I definitely got wrong is my boy Kelvin Gastelum. He tapped in the third round, and honestly, it's heartbreaking. I feel like Kelvin had so much potential, and I really thought, right, he's going to come down this division and he's going to find his division. And I had high hopes for him. But where do you think he goes from here after tapping so early? Well, not early in the third round.
I honestly, Dwain, I'm going to break your heart some more now. I don't see what you see in Kelvin Gastelum. I just don't. He had a really good fight with Adesanya, and since then it's been, it's inconsistent as Michael Johnson. If he turns up for the fight, he's always injured. He's injured more than that sick kid at school who was never there. That's just Kelvin, and it seems to be into adulthood. I think he looked good at welterweight. I mean, I can't get invested into any of his fights, and maybe he seems a little too short for middleweight because they just seem to be able to pick him apart. Welterweight, there's a few good fights, but I don't think he's going to be missed if he did leave, if I'm totally honest.
No, I agree. And that's the thing. I think it's more just the potential of Kelvin. I think after he had that amazing fight with Adesanya, it just felt like he could have achieved something fantastic. And I think I was always just hoping for that potential to be shown. But I think now he's moved down in the division and he's getting finished off by someone like Sean Brady. And that's no knock on Sean Brady. Sean Brady's good.
No.
But Kelvin should be clearing through him easily. And unfortunately, he didn't. And that's kind of it. I think maybe he needs to start looking at retirement or just finish out his contract, do a couple of fights and see where he goes from there, right?
I think Kelvin Gastelum's fight with Adesanya is along the same lines as Rory McDonald's fight with Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
He's got, there's other things, there's other credentials, but he's known mainly by a widespread audience for one fight. And it's a loss in that fight. You're like, come on, let's face reality, boy.
Yeah, it's a shame, but it is what it is. And maybe he might be able to sort something out, but I don't think he will. I think even me, a big fan like I am, I think you have to just accept it, don't you? And go, right, let's move on. Let's find someone else to put our hopes on. Hopefully Paddy Pimblett.
Stop that immediately.
But anyway, we move on now to Figgy. He stepped up into a new division, and I was surprised, actually. His power seemed to translate very, very well. His technique looked great. He looked fantastic all round. Do you think because he's knocked off number 8 now and he's a former champion, do you think we could see him step up into that title picture real soon?
I really do, and I really hope so as well. I'm all about anyone throwing a spanner into the works of the UFC because I'm all about, you want to keep divisions fresh. You want to keep them from going stale. And exactly like you said then, for Davison Figueiredo to beat number 8 ranked Rob Font, which I'm happy about, by the way. Forget about Rob Font. Don't like him. This opens up the division for super fights of Davison versus, Piotr Jan, Marlon Vera, Corey Sandhagen, even Henry Cejudo, Aljamain Sterling, the ex-champion. That would be a perfect fight, I think.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Figgy has really, really proved that he can stand in this division, and I'm really, really excited for it. And yeah, I can see him moving up to a title shot after one more fight. I think if he beats someone like Jan or Vera or Aljo, like you were saying, we'll see him go up against Sean O'Malley. I do worry about Figgy fighting someone like Sean O'Malley just because Sean O'Malley's so bloody tall. I just don't see how Figgy's going to be able to break that distance almost. So it feels like he'll get caught coming in quite easily, I think.
But Henry Cejudo would be a super fight. That's a fight that I'm keen on seeing, is that?
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Two former champions going at it. And that's the thing, when you're a former champion, we've seen how quick the UFC are to push you towards a title. So, and he was a decent name. He's a big name, great champion. So hopefully we'll see him really, really step up in that division. But I tell you who did step up, Jalen Turner, on 2 weeks' notice against Bobby Green. And he got the first round KO. It seems strange because it felt like Bobby Green had that potential to be a new dark horse of the division. And, it felt like maybe we could see him moving up into a title picture fairly soon. But now Bobby's lost. And I think he's like 36 or something like that. He's not young. Where does he go from here?
I put Bobby Green, just because we were recently speaking about it, I'll put Bobby Green into the Kelvin Gastelum territory where he's had a few notable wins, i.e., Tony Ferguson. But it's too inconsistent. There's no real threat to the champion or the big top contenders in Bobby Green.
Yeah.
But is a threat to the mid-carders. Does that make any sense what to say?
It makes perfect sense. And that's what you need, though, sometimes. Not every fighter can be champion. Not everyone needs to be this top contender. You need these middle-of-the-road fighters who can work as gatekeepers and as strong, powerful gatekeepers who can really stop people just jumping up for title shots when they shouldn't be getting one. You need fighters like that. So I think Bobby Green's kind of found his place near the end of his career, just fighting up new up and
well, his place seems to be face down on the floor, if that's what you're getting at, Dwayne.
Oh, well, let's talk about that. What did you think of the finish in this fight? It felt to me as though the ref was trying to get Jalen Turner on a murder charge. It was disgusting. I genuinely didn't know what was going on there.
It seemed as if the referee, he watched Hostel and then he thought, I want the thing in real life. So he just left it. You know what the funny thing was? Because I didn't actually catch it live. I watched it this morning and I seen the KO and, it was following up and I clicked open another tab on my computer. And anyway, I was just doing something and about 7 or 8 seconds later, I just heard, that's it, it's over. I'm like, what? They let it carry on for that long? Let's go back and watch it. It was disgusting.
He was out twice, at least twice.
I know.
What did the ref want to see before he goes, right, that's enough? I literally didn't get it. I was like, are you going to stop this now? Like, it's literally an hour.
Mario Yamasaki was doing backflips at home, just sat there eating Cheetos saying, I didn't see the ref doing anything wrong.
Well,
Steve Mazzagatti there as well, just buddying him. Fine.
Well, he's now a ref in PFL, isn't it? Imagine if he refs the Francis fight. Oh my God, someone will die. Literally, someone's gonna die. Scary. But anyway, let's move on. Someone else who got flatlined was Dariush. She got KO'd in a minute. It's wild to think Dariush was the dark horse of the division. We were talking about him just 6 months ago that he was going to step up and fight Islam. We all thought he was going to batter Charles. And now he's on a 2-fight losing skid. Again, I've asked this a couple of times already, but it just feels like this card's really throwing a spanner in the works. And that's what I love about these kind of fight nights, is where does Dariush go from here?
It's a tough one with Dariush because we stated last week that I've never seen a hype train get derailed as quickly as Beneil Dariush did after Charles Oliveira knocked him out. Now, granted, this was another main event, but he got KO'd in around about a minute. This hasn't done anything for his stock. This hasn't done anything for his fan base.
No.
I think Dariush is going to be one of those. He'll be an answer to a trivia question of who almost made it to the top. Sadly, as harsh as that sounds, but it's true.
Yeah.
Who's bothered now? Are you excited to see what Beneil does next? I'm not.
No, I'm not, unless it's like a big contender who's going to get a name win off him. But yeah, I'm really, really not interested. I think That's it now, isn't it? That hype train, like you're saying, is completely derailed now. It's not just derailed, it's come off, it's crashed, it's killed
Yeah,
everyone on the train. It's a natural disaster. It's terrible. Let's
yeah.
just move on from Darius. But with Arman, after the fight, he called out Islam Makhachev and said, I'm going to knock him out. Do you think Arman could be jumping at a title picture soon, or do you think he's way down the list?
Is there in sort of name value, but I do not see him. I do not see him getting the title shot just because of his name. He's not well known enough. He's not a household name. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever just to see that. It's not. You can't imagine Islam Makhachev versus Arman, can you? It just doesn't happen.
That does not sell well as a fight. I mean, they've fought before, but that's not a big pay-per-view, is it? And for me, Arman's like got to be fourth in line, right? Surely you've got Charles Oliveira up next, Justin Gaethje, and then Dustin Poirier is always in the mix as well, and Gamrot. So then, maybe Arman's fifth in line, really. So to think that he's going to get a title shot within the next year, 2 years, is just, it's near impossible, right?
Lightweight's got too big of a waiting line, doesn't it? No one can jump the queue in lightweight. It just doesn't make any sense. It's too busy. You've got to keep the natural flow going. Like you say, imagine if Arman jumped ahead of Justin Gaethje. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think what he could do best right now is go enjoy his time with his family. Go watch the replay of him flatlining Beneil a few times over. Have a good Christmas and assess it in the new year. Maybe Dustin Poirier fancies a challenge again. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it'd be good to see what Dustin's going to do. I mean, apparently he was supposed to fight Dariush, but he kept turning it down, which is fair enough. I mean, like you said before, Dariush isn't a big name, so why would he fight him? Totally makes sense. I think the right fight for our man now is to do a rematch with Gamrot, and then the winner of that then steps up, and then we see Gamrot or Arman move up into that title picture, and they become one of the top contenders. But until then, no, he's not getting a title shot anytime soon. But as fun as this card was, there was also another fantastic fight. Eddie Alvarez versus Mike Perry. Well, did you see any of this fight, Mark?
I think I seen a little clip, but I didn't watch it. I actually forgot it was on, to be honest. But I'm indulged. You can indulge me in what happened.
Basically, they both got battered. You know what bare knuckles like, and then Eddie got pulled on his stool after the second round because he broke his orbital bone. Honestly, his head was fatter than mine. It was ridiculous. He was out here, he looked like Quasimodo. But something that's interesting for me, but maybe not for you, because we know how much you dislike him now. Mike Perry called out Conor McGregor after the fight. As big as a Conor fan I am, I just don't see that fight happening. Do you?
It means nothing. I'll just say it plainly there. Mike Perry calling out Conor McGregor has no value in it whatsoever. There's nothing going to be done.
No.
And I'll almost bet my bottom dollar for that, but not quite, just in case it does.
Yeah, just in case.
But no, it's just name value though, isn't it? Like, yeah, all right. Conor's just going to jump over to BKFC, is he? Not going to happen, is it? But I'll give you that. Mike Perry's on fire. He's doing really well. It seems like he's really found his place. BKFC, it could be, it's like a better version of Triller.
It kind of is, really, isn't it? But even more dangerous. It's a really, really scary promotion to watch. God, sometimes you worry about the fighters, but it is what it is. But I agree. I don't see Conor versus Mike happening in BKFC. I mean, they simply couldn't afford him. Apparently, the owner of BKFC had to remortgage his home just to fund Eddie versus Perry, which is wild. But Mike does now have a title, and we know how much Conor loves a golden strap. So let's not forget, he was the first ever double champion in the UFC, and he's always itching for some gold. So, Mark, let's move on and talk about the double champions, and we'll talk a bit about Conor. What did you think of Conor's title run, and do you think he's probably one of the worst double champions of all time?
It's kind of I'm taking my bias out of it, and I'm trying to just be as straight down the line as what I can, because the prestige is there because he was the first. double champion, to hold them both simultaneously, I mean. But you look at it, it's very short-lived. When you actually, as a statement, it's very impressive. But when you look at it, didn't defend either of them once. And it looked like it was the right place, right time, golden child to go through, stormed through the featherweight division, then beat Eddie Alvarez, and then just kind of tottered off and fought Floyd Mayweather. You're like, that isn't a championship mindset, surely. As if I've ever been a champion. But you know what I mean? Like, as in, we get people that it just seems more noble, in order to defend the belt. This is mine now. I'm proving why I am the king of the mountain. But Conor didn't do that. So whilst the prestige is there of him being the first ever double champ, it stinks a little bit. It's lackluster when you break it down.
I agree, but sort of, I don't think I've really asked a fair question, because I think, asking who's the worst double champ is like asking what's the worst blowjob. They're all bloody good, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They're all fantastic. But with Conor, his run for the double belt, there's nothing quite like it. Don't forget, he fought 4 times in 11 months, and he fought 2, from end to end, 2 of the best champions. People talk about Jose Aldo now as still the best featherweight of all time. And Eddie Alvarez, I think a big problem for Eddie is people remember him for the guy who got battered by Conor, but then they forgot he battered Justin Gaethje after that. He had 2 wars with Dustin Poirier, and he was a monster in Bellator against Michael Chandler. I think people forget how good Eddie Alvarez is and how good Conor was in both of those title fights, and of course he fought Nate Diaz 2 times in between them.
Such a strange one is that, though, isn't it? Like, why do people not remember Eddie for his full career? They literally remember him for a finishing combination that Conor McGregor threw. What? Yeah. How weird is that? He was a champion.
I know.
I don't know.
It's a shame. Unfortunately, I think even we're guilty of it, and I think even the most diehard fans are. With MMA, it's what have you done for me lately? Like, look at Izzy, for example. We were talking about Izzy as being one of the best middleweights of all time. And when he finished off Alex, it felt like, right, he's going to do this. And then he got dominated by Strickland. And they're like, yeah, who's that guy? Nobody cares anymore. We move on so fast. And it's because these divisions move so fast. And we've got fights every week, every month. It's almost hard to remember. You think, yeah, all right, whatever, that's gone now. It's out of the picture,
Well, we've said before, MMA fans in particular, have got very short-term memory, don't they? Like you say, you mentioned Israel Adesanya, and they remember Sean Strickland screaming at his face and dropping him in the first round. I do as well. But at the same time, you've got to look at it as a collective, as a whole. And I think that's what separates, I'm not going to say casual, but I'm going to separate and say it's what separates people who know what they're talking about and who have just channel flicked in. If they've just caught that one fight and that's all, you think all the amount of hours, years, training put together, you think that it can be summed up in one moment. It's like Ben Askren, perfect example. His entire career can be summed up in 5 seconds by a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, like I've said before with Ben, if Ben had come just a few years earlier, we could be talking about Ben Askren as one of the greats. But unfortunately, he came in, retired. No, I genuinely believe that. I think he could have done it. I think with how good his wrestling was, he could have caused a lot of problems there. But, he came in at the wrong time, twice retired, needing a hip replacement, finally got his hip done, got battered by a YouTuber. And it's like, well, and that's tough for Ben, Ben decided to do that. That's all on him, There's no sympathy there. But I've never seen a guy walk off so happy, being knocked out with a big bag of money and his beautiful wife in his arm. He was literally laughing as he left. So good for him, right? I mean, I wish I could get beaten up by a YouTuber for £1 million. I'd be pretty happy with it, to be honest.
Yeah, it won't be turned up to the office on Monday, I don't think.
Definitely not. So, of course, there's double champions, but there's also 2 division champions, and the first person to be a 2 division champion is Randy Couture. Mark, what do you sort of think about his title run overall?
You can't not love Randy Couture. Even Joe Rogan said it's his hero. He really is one of the pioneers of the UFC and of the sport in general. Randy Couture is I'm going to steal a Sean Strickland quote, is a man's man. is Randy Couture. He just turns up, gets things done, and to still be doing it. He was the champion at 45 years of age when Lesnar beat him. It's crazy. He's had a great rivalry, with Chuck Liddell. The amount of other people that he's beat. He did. Don't forget, Randy Couture did a crossover fight with James Toney as well, the boxer. Absolutely battered him, But this is what I mean. It's as annoying as the crossovers are. They're not new. It's just in this social media day and age, it seems to be that they're everywhere, but they have always happened, and you can't dislike Randy.
No,
I don't.
You definitely can't. And what I always find such a shame is why is Randy Couture not up there with names that like Connor and Silver and even Chuck Liddell, like names that people just know off the top of their lips. I mean, for fight fans he is, but why is he not more well known? I think it's such a shame because wasn't he like his first championship like in '97 and then he won it again in 2004? So it's such a ridiculous run, and you think he is, like you said, a pioneer of the sport, and it feels like he should be a household name, right? And unfortunately, he's not.
I think you've got to go with the times as well because the UFC is a very young sport. It's only been going 30 years, and for most of that, it's just been seen as violent, unnecessary blood sport that people aren't interested in, and they want to shield the children from watching that kind of thing. So Randy was around in a lot of that era. When did Lesnar beat him for the belt? Was it like 2008 or something like that? 2008, 9, maybe 10. But then he's since retired. It's perfect time, perfect place, I think, for what I was speaking about earlier. People who actually know what they're talking about know how great Randy Couture is. But anyone tuning in, they say, "Oh, he was just a champion." You're like, what do you mean, just a champion? Light heavyweight and heavyweight champion. The names on his resume are crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And some of the best fighters on the planet are 2 division champions. You've got people like BJ Penn, John Jones, GSP. But for some reason, it feels less impressive being a 2 division champion. And I'm not sure why that is. Why do you think people are more impressed by double champion than 2 division champion?
I think because it's barely been done. Like we've just said there, MMA fans have such a short-term memory. They probably won't remember people's reigns previously, unless it was really dominant, like John Jones's or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you said, BJ Penn, when he became the welterweight champion, you got, oh, fantastic. That's good. So he was the lightweight champion as well. Oh, was he? All right. As in, because it's not simultaneously, you're not running 2 divisions at the same time. When you're the champion, you are the man. You are the woman, the top of the division, etc., etc. When you lose, no one cares. It just seems to be like people are only there for the highest highs and they're not there for any of the lows at all.
Unfortunately, we're there for the lows, Mark, at 3:00 in the morning in tears. But it is what it is. Unfortunately, that's the sadness of being an MMA fan. But let's move quickly back on to double champions. Who do you think personally is the best double champion within the UFC?
Double champion, I think, not just because I'm being a little fanboy, but I'll probably say GSP. Because you say, well, as in he ran welterweight, he had a couple of flaws, but he went and redeemed them losses. He retired, came back a few years later and beat the champion in Michael Bisping. Yeah. That's a moment that doesn't come around too often where someone goes out on a win, winning the championship belt, shooting his guns, his pistols on the horseback, out of town. I don't know. GSP just seemed to be, he's just such an all-round MMA fighter. He can do it all.
Yeah, he really can.
What about yourself? Who would you go for? Who's the best?
Well, for me, I think the problem with GSP is, like you were saying with Connor, he didn't defend that second belt. He retired immediately afterwards. And so for me, the only champion I can think of, double champion, that did defend the belts consistently is Amanda Nunes. I think she ran 2 divisions back to back consistently, and she was at the top of her game for a whole career, minus a little blip against Pena, but she got that back. And, but the issue is with Nunes, as valuable it is as being this double champion, women's featherweight is basically non-existent, right? I mean, yeah, she had that fantastic fight with Chris Cyborg, but there was no one else for there to fight. You know, it felt like, right, you had one fight in the UFC, you're roughly the right weight, go on, jump, have a go in and get beaten up by Nunes for a couple of quid. Do you think now that Nunes has retired, we're going to get this featherweight division scrapped entirely?
I think so, because there's been no talk about it since, has there?
No.
There was barely any talk about it when Nunes was carrying the belt. The division wasn't there. It wasn't existent.
Yeah.
I don't see it. What's funny is we were talking about fans are very greedy, and it's what have you done for me lately? Every single double champion that we've mentioned there's always a but. There's always a big what if. And there's always
a problem, isn't it?
Would be the greatest if not for this. So we're guilty of it as well. You know, nothing's ever enough. You know, people are double champion. That puts them in like what? 0.1% of the fighters in the world or something. That never happens. You know, there's barely been any in the UFC, and we're still saying it's not enough.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It is weird. It's this constant, right, you are not enough. I want more. Like, look at Khabib. People say, well, he never stepped up to welterweight, did he? You think, well, so what? What's that got to do with anything? You know, He dominated the division. But, you know, unfortunately, it's what fans are like, and it's what we're like as well. You know, we've just admitted that. But with double champions, not two division champions, we've always talking about them not defending the lower belt. And outside of Nunes, no one's ever defended that lower belt. Why do you think that is?
I'm not even sure if I have. I think because potentially they've reached the mountaintop and then they just think, right, what's next for me? So if they do obtain that, why would they then go down to a division that they already run? That's the only thing that I can think of. I'm not saying that's for certain, but that's something that's at the forefront of my mind. Because I'm running through my mind now, like actual double champions. You think, yeah, it hasn't happened, you know, Cejudo, that kind of stuff. It hasn't. And again, Cejudo retired way too soon.
Yeah. And well, he retired to try and get a couple extra quid, and it didn't pan out too well.
Backfired though, didn't it? That must have been humbling when he got home and the phone wasn't ringing, and he just sat there looking at his two replica belts. And Dana White isn't his friend on Facebook anymore.
Terrible, isn't it? And that's the thing, he really shot himself in the foot doing that. But, you know, poor Cejudo, but, you know, if you do that, you do it on yourself, don't you? But I think the real reason is why no one defends that title is because going up a division, you've really got to put some size on to actually be competitive there. And then dropping down just makes it too difficult because it's not size as in fat, it's in muscle and strength, and that's hard to get rid of, isn't it? Whereas, right, if I've eaten a couple of extra cheeseburgers to go up or a pizza, like in Izzy's case, you can just diet that back down. You know, exactly what happened with Izzy. I think when he came in at 205, I think he was 4 pounds under the limit. I think he came in at like 201, 201 and a half. And it just proved that like Jan's just too physically strong for him. And unfortunately, Izzy just wasn't double champ material.
Well, that's the thing of losing weight is different to cutting weight. So different. Cutting weight is a very temporary fix. It's dehydration and all that. You know, you've seen them in the saunas, turn up for the weigh-in, then go and eat whatever the hell they want, you know, in order. That's why champions, typically Aljamain Sterling, he comes in at like, what, 170 in fight night, that kind of thing. That's why it's kind of borderline grey area cheating, do you not think?
It is cheating. It's cheating. I hate weight cutting. I've said it for a long time. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's bad for the fighters. It's not good for their health. And it's not good for the people they're fighting. If I'm coming into the octagon at 150 and my opponent's coming in at 170, I mean, maybe that's my left leg versus my right leg, but still, that's not the point. You know, it's not fair. Like, why should I have to fight this guy who weighs 20 pounds heavier than me? You know, this isn't a Jake Paul fight, yeah? We're not having to go and fight some young kid who's really strong. I hate it. I don't think it should be happening, but...
Well, you notice a complete difference when people fight around about their natural weight class. I'm not talking just win or lose. I'm talking about octagon presence, cardio, energy preserve, and all that. Colby Covington barely cuts weight. That's his weight. If you cast your mind back to a few years back when Cain Velasquez was top of the heavyweight division, he'd come out into the 5th round like it was the first. He was a cardio machine, you know. It's cutting. It's difficult, isn't it? Because just going back to your point earlier about Adesanya, in order to go back down, imagine if he'd have won and then to go back down into middleweight, because it's quite a drop, you know, especially if it's muscle to cope with guys like Jan, Yuri, Pereira, you know, if he was stuck around at light heavyweight. It's such a hard adjustment, and especially those two divisions that are so volatile. You've got to be so ready. So you've basically doubled your workload, you know, for your career. That's why, you know, no one should be berating any sort of double champion or any champion, to be honest. If you reach the top of the mountain, you're one of the all-time elite fighters, whether it's a fluke or not.
I agree 100%. It's like when we always talk about that GOAT conversation. For me, we never need that conversation. We have the answer. If you've held the gold, you are one of the greatest fighters of all time. I don't care how you won it. You are one of the best fighters, and just move on. You know, you don't need this conversation everywhere. Oh, who's better, GSP or Silva? Shut up. Nobody cares. What pointless question. But yeah, it's tricky, isn't it, to be constantly moving up and down and shifting weights. And I think if the UFC got rid of weight cutting, we'd see even better fights. I think everyone would be in the best physical condition. They'd all be fighting at their proper weight class, and we'd get 5-round bangers all the time. But, you know, I think people are obsessed with becoming double champions, though, so they're willing to do that kind of thing. Go, right, I'll cut all this weight and then I'll go and move up into my natural weight division and then be at a disadvantage, which is a tricky one to do. But why do you think fighters, Mark, all of a sudden are obsessed with becoming double champion and not just settling for, right, I'm going to conquer one division?
I think it's quite annoying, if I'm honest. Someone wins the title and then they decide to do, I want to go up to a division as well. Leon Edwards is talking about moving up to middleweight. You're like, defend the belt, Leon. You're not active. You know, like, people forget about you. Anyway, before you'd won the belt, he's known for a knockout of one of the best welterweights ever. Yeah. Defend that belt. You've got to get through Colby first. And then there's a good few others before you can even think about that. Surely moving up a weight class is when you go, I won't mind a challenge. Israel Adesanya was justified. Granted, it didn't go his way, but he was justified. He was on the second lap of everyone that he's already beat. Completely justified. I'm not saying you always have to get to that stage. You know, sometimes you can go up just to challenge yourself, you know, maybe like GSP did straight after. That paid off. But what I think the people just want to be known as they've got all the gold. They've got all the glory. I swear, I bet it's not going to be too long. Give it 5 years and someone will have been triple champ.
Yeah, I think if we're going to get triple champs, it'll be someone in the women's divisions, I think, because the skill disparity is not so huge. The physical advantages aren't that huge. You know, if you got someone like, I don't know, Rose, maybe she could have been a 3-division champ. Though, to be fair, she really struggled when she stepped up. No, I'm going to put my girl forward. Zhang Weili will be a 3-division champ.
I was going to say, Dwayne, what are you even saying? You're talking about Rose. I could tell that cut you deep. Come on, let's just get it out of the way. Zhang Weili, fanboy, we all know. And we welcome it.
She could. I think she could move up, fight. She could beat Grasso quite easily, and she could beat Juliana Pena very, very comfortably. So that's where, if we're going to see a 3-division champion, it's going to be a female fighter, I think. I think in the male division, it's just too hard. You've got people talking about Hamzat doing it, but I mean, Hamzat barely fought in the actual division he's supposed to be in. I can't imagine him going up to 205. I think, you know, if he's getting dropped by Gilbert Burns, imagine what Alex Pereira's fist will do to him. You know, he'll murder him.
These are the things, though, aren't they, of like, I think for whether it's GOAT conversations or double champ, triple champ, whatever status is, we've got to leave prospects out of it. He hasn't even got his first belt yet, you know. And it's very rare that someone does obtain a second belt at the same time, whether it's simultaneously or, you know, just further along the line. So people like Hamzat, you're going, well, we'll see. That's all we can do. We can't,
we'll see,
you know, and that's it. You know, we'll see what the next couple of years brings, because he's really slowed down being active, hasn't he? I don't know if it was punishment for really messing up that card one time, but I'm really not sure, because before that, didn't he fight 3 times in about 66 days?
Yeah, he fought a lot, and I think it's because of some visa issues or something. That seems to be what the problem is, but who really knows? That's the thing. People say one thing, someone reports another. It's hard to know the actual truth. But the same as you, Mark, I'm kind of getting fed up of people talking about becoming double champion. DDP was talking about it. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to beat Strickland and I'm going to move up to 205 and fight Alex." I was like, "You've not even won the belt yet. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
How are you gonna
Yeah, I think
how are you gonna talk about moving up when you've not even won the belt? It makes no sense."
it's not a conversation that belongs, I don't think, especially for someone like DDP. Look, I don't hate DDP, so it's not a personal opinion, although it did beat Robert Whittaker, which I hated him about, and his face has been on my dartboard ever since. But that aside, DDP has no right whatsoever to be talking about going up in an upper weight until you've got the belt. And then again, I'm contradicting myself because Leon Edwards has the belt, and I'm thinking, shut up, Leon. Just defend at welterweight. That is your weight class. You weren't talking about going up to middleweight before when you were poking Bilal Muhammad in the eye. So now you've got the belt. Why do you want to move up?
Yeah,
Just for all the fame and glory. Boring.
Exactly, and that's what it is. It's boring fame fighter. And glory, isn't it? But what's your sort of if someone's going to be a double champ, Mark? What do you say they need to do? What does a champion need to do for you to go, yeah, I think you deserve to go up and fight in the division above you?
Well, it's not, the thing is, it's not up to me either, but something that I'm happy with, and I'm like, yeah, that's justified, is what I said earlier, like Adesanya. He was on his double lap, and you just think, okay, he's cleaned out the division. What else is next for him? Have a challenge that keeps people engaged. Alex Pereira, that's another one as well. Look, for the short amount of time he's been in the UFC, you can't discredit him. The people that he's beat, the people that he's knocked out and knocked off, and he is huge for that division. So then you go, well, let's see what he can do at light heavyweight, like a division that he's probably more comfortable in, his actual weight class. And you're like, well, he beat Jan, regardless of what you think about that fight. He beat Jan, and then he knocked out Yuri Prohaska in the second round, and he was looking good in that fight. So you think, you know what? Fair enough. And all Alex needs to do is go up to heavyweight, and if he clips whoever the champion is with that left hand, he could be the first triple champ. You never know. So it's a race between Alex Pereira and Zhang Weili.
I bet Alex would still have to cut weight to make 265. He's a giant. He's a huge bloke. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I'm in agreement with. I'm kind of fed up of just champions just defending once and moving up. Like, look at Cejudo. He defended once, got to move up. Look at Conor. He didn't defend once. No, I'm going
to say, wash your mouth out, Dwayne.
Yeah,
didn't defend once.
Cejudo, and neither did Cejudo. I've misspoke there. He didn't defend. He won the title and moved straight up and fought TJ. And for me, that's not enough. For me, you have to if you win the title, you don't have to beat your top 3, 4. You've got to get off the top 5 of your division, and then you can move up. And until that moment, it shouldn't be happening. Like Aljamain Sterling, for example. If he'd have moved up to double champ and fought Volk, I wouldn't have been upset at that. But it feels as though Dana hated Aljamain and just was not interested in giving him that opportunity.
Volkanovski is a perfect example with that as well. If he would have beat Islam, I'm not going to bring this up because I think we've got PTSD from that. Both those fights, Dwayne. But Volkanovski cleaned everyone out. Who else is left for him at featherweight? Once he gets through, well, if he gets through Tuporia, then that's it. You're like, well, what else is there? He's just sat there. What should he do? 4th fight with Holloway? No, who wants to see that? Apart from Holloway fans.
And Holloway himself. But I think that's the thing, is it? When you see like high-level fighters like Izzy and Volk failing at becoming double champion, it really puts into perspective how difficult it really, really is. It's like, yeah, fine, we can all badmouth Conor and Cejudo, but it's these elite fighters who can really step up and go, yeah, I'm going to move up a weight division and I'm going to get the belt here. And it's so difficult to do. It's really, really hard. But, sort of talking of Izzy and, saying that he's not perhaps double champ material, we could maybe see him move up to 205 and try and beat Alex and then maybe move back down to middleweight. But how do you see Izzy's chances at 205 against Alex?
I think that's the only time I'd like to see a a third fight in the UFC between these two, to be honest, is at 205, because it brings a new interest to it, doesn't it? Rather than just, they're going at it again and again and again.
Yeah.
I do quite like Israel's chances, if I'm totally honest. It just seems that Jan, at the time, this was 2021, wasn't it? Jan at the time, with the takedowns and things, he really, really did give Israel Adesanya trouble. But I think there's a lot of people at 205 that Israel Adesanya is capable of knocking out and making it look quite easy, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, I'd have really, when people are always about, well, Alex did what Izzy couldn't. Well, I'd love to see Alex go and fight the same Jan that Izzy did, not elevation at 5 rounds. A younger, stronger guy. See how well you did then. I think that Jan would have battered Alex, But again, that's more a what I coulda, woulda, really. It's all hyperbole, so it doesn't mean much. But we could see Alex become a double champion, not just a 2-division champion, because, middleweight is possible for him to reach to. Do you think he should go back down and fight Sean Strickland, the guy he's already beat?
No. I think
fair enough.
Sorry, Dwayne, I couldn't give you any more there. I think he's already knocked him out in the first round, and I think it'd look quite obvious what he's doing if he did decide, right, I'm going to go down. It doesn't look like a challenge.
No.
Strickland can surprise us all like he did in his last outing against Izzy, but I think it would just look silly for him to go back down. Plus, I think they're actually training partners now, or the friends or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
They've been training together anyway, but it is what it is. But no, I think if Pereira is going to do anything, he would move forward, move up. If anything's going to happen, I think he's well established that he's probably done with middleweight now. You can't argue. Look, we talk about people like Connor's rise to the top in featherweight. Alex Pereira's rise at middleweight, man, to come in, and he's already riding off the steam of he's the only guy to knock Adesanya out, then to come in and get devastating finish after finish, and then to finally meet the guy he's already beat twice and to knock him out, take his belt off him. It's like a fairy tale, honestly. It's a movie.
It is. It is a movie, and it's a wild run. And just like you, this is where I'd love to see a trilogy. See them going at it at 205, put the final nail in this coffin. And I'd love to see it. But we'll have to wait and see if that's ever going to happen. I don't think Izzy's wanting that. I think he's like, nah, I'm going to just finish on settling this score. I've got the win. But we'll have to wait and see. But with the light heavyweight division, it feels as though anything could happen and he might not be champion for long. Ever since John Jones left this division, it seems like he's left some voodoo over it. And, anyone who touches the belt is after him. That's it. Like whoever touched that belt's now cursed. With these sort of issues with the light heavyweight division, Mark, do you find it hard to invest in the light heavyweight division?
I do slightly. It's getting there now. It's becoming a little better now, but you're exactly right. Since John Jones left the division in early 2020, it's just been an absolute mess, hasn't it? We've had great moments, we've seen Polish Power come to rise. We've seen Glover Teixeira defy the odds and become the champion at 42, 43. That was a great moment. We've seen the rise of Yuri Prohaska and Jamal Hill as well. So there has been great moments, but there's been no static champion. There's been no one where you think, oh, this is the guy to beat. Because you compare to John Jones because he didn't lose the belt. You seem to always think it feels like John could just come swoop in on a vine, just take the belt and move on, and no one would bat an eyelid. Everyone just say, okay, yeah, he runs the division still. It feels like that, even though Jones is 36 and a heavyweight now.
I agree. It does feel like he's looming over this division, isn't he, constantly? And, it's a real shame because it feels like that light heavyweight division cannot move on. And since John Jones was champion, we've had one successful defense, and that was Jan against Izzy. So perhaps the curse affected Izzy instead, him moving up. And then Jan fought Glover. And I don't know what happened there, but I genuinely think that's probably one of the worst performances we've ever seen from Jan. He had nothing on the feet and he had nothing on the ground. And he tapped so early, didn't he? It didn't even feel like the choke was in. I mean, I don't know what it's like. I don't like if someone touches my neck or tickles me slightly. Never mind getting choked out by a big angry Brazilian guy. But how quick he tapped out, it seems so strange, right?
It genuinely was, because I remember the build-up to that fight. We were talking and we says, what are you going for? Old man strength or Polish power? And you're like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Got down to it, and it's like Jan Blachowicz didn't turn up. I think he even said after, I think I left the Polish power in the hotel room. It's like he didn't want to engage, and you'd think that would be the other way around. Because I'm not disputing Glover's chin whatsoever, but we've seen he can be touched. Rumble Johnson, did you ever see that knockout? He finished him in, I think it was less than 15 seconds. Came out, bang, done. He's been done before as Glover, and you think Jan definitely possesses the power. But I'm with you. That was a weird performance. That super strange to see. You think, what's wrong with him? If he came out after and he says, I'm actually chronically ill, you'd be like, okay, fair enough then. Understandable.
It's the curse of 205, Mark. You cannot avoid it. And obviously I don't believe in curses, but it does feel like a cursed division. It feels like there's just something over it, something weird. And, then you had Glover facing off against Yuri, and Glover dominated that fight. He was literally beating him from pillar to post. And then when he had him on the ropes, about to get the finish, he jumped the gilly for some insane reason. I don't know what it is. I think there John Jones with his voodoo doll twisting his arm around went, no, you're not winning here. And then Yuri finished Glover via submission. Did you ever think that Yuri Prochazka would finish Glover Teixeira via submission, Mark?
No, especially with the way that the fight went. That was one of the most back and forth fights that I can remember in the light heavyweight division for a long time. It was great, entertaining to watch. And like you said, the moment when Glover was close to getting a TKO and then he jumped for a guillotine, it's like Chael Sonnen in the last round with Anderson Silva. You think, why? If I was a time traveler, I would go back and I would make sure Chael Sonnen just scurries backwards and doesn't get into that triangle lock. And if I was a time traveler, I would make sure that Glover landed another right hand rather than jumping the gilly for Yuri Prochazka, and he would still be champion right now. Damn it!
I think I'd get the lottery number.
Old man strength will win.
Yeah. If I was a time traveler, Mark, I think I'd get the lottery numbers. But if you want, to get some fighters to win, fair enough. You could do both. But and then we had Yuri was supposed to defend against Glover in a rematch, and he tore his shoulder. And then we had Ankalaev versus Jan for the vacant belt, which resulted in a draw. Again, another insane result. Mark, what did you think? Did you think that was a fair result for the draw?
You're taking me down memory lane of the light heavyweight division here. There's things like that you forget. Oh, yeah, that went wrong as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
This is like literally the sinking of the Titanic. It just gets worse and worse and worse until eventually, all right, there's a couple of people floating around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that. That was I'm never that disgusted at a draw because it's got to be so thinly sliced. And you think, look, best of both worlds. I think Jan was a bit of an idiot because he chopped his legs and then he just ended up, getting taken down. So you think, play that to your advantage. Dana White was pissed off watching that, wasn't he? He was like, no, absolutely not. And he never makes fights. That's what he always says. But, I think he's gone back on that quite a few times. Never makes fights the night of a fight. But instantly he made Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill, didn't he? That's how angry he was. I think it was a bit unjustified, but that wasn't a bad fight. It was a bit like watching old Yeller get put to sleep, though.
Yeah, it was a fun fight though to watch, and I agree with you. I'm not often upset with a draw. I think we should really get more draws, if I'm all honest. I think so many of these fights are so close. Draws often the most fair result, and I think with that one it was super fair. But like you were saying, Dana then announced Jamal Hill versus Glover, and again, it felt there was something off about Glover that night. He got absolutely polished by Jamal Hill, and I did not expect that to happen. Did you expect Jamal Hill to put on such a fantastic performance against Glover?
No, I was expecting a lot more grappling, if I'm honest, as well. But that was one of those moments that I don't think gets spoke about enough. Coming into the fifth round, Glover Teixeira with his face looking like a lasagna, stands up, smacks his hands together. He says, "Let's go, baby." Looking at Jamal Hill like that, let's have it, let's go. Comes out, and obviously it was a decision win for Jamal because he just battered. But then it took that Hollywood shine off it because it was in Brazil and most of the fans had already left the arena to hear Glover retire. It just really took that shine off it, because it was a special moment. He retired the same night as Shogun did, another great fighter. People forget how good Shogun was, and I don't know, it just really ruined the moment a little bit for me.
I agree. I think it's such a shame, especially I don't know what it is about the Brazilian fans. They're so passionate, and yet they seem to really sort of disappoint the rest of the fans across the world. Like throwing stuff at Brandon Moreno when he beat Figgy and things like that. It's like, come on, man. These are some amazing moments. Make them special, and because for me, live sports, as great as it is to see the fighters, obviously, the crowd really make it. And if the crowd's not into it and they're not showing the support they need, I think it can ruin the whole event. And like you're saying, it really takes the shine off. And then, Jamal Hill won. And before he could defend the belt, he had to vacate it because he tore his Achilles. This division is just becoming, the division of the unexpected. It's just wild injuries left, right, and center. And it's just insane, isn't it? That Hill didn't even get a shot at defending this belt. And, it seemed like he was set to fight Yuri, and Yuri seemed really excited to come back and fight him. But what we got instead was Yuri versus Alex for the vacant belt. And somewhat of a controversial finish. Mark, how did you feel of the end of that fight? Did you think it was a fair ending, or do you think there's a little something wrong with it?
It's a strange one to talk about now because at the time I remember thinking, well, why did Mark Goddard stop it? But then when you watch the post-fight interview after and Yuri just came around and said, I was out, I go, okay, all that's put to rest then. It doesn't matter now because if he said he was out, there's no argument for it. But at the time I remember thinking it's early. But then again, I'd rather that than seeing a Bobby Green finish from the fight night, an actual murder.
God, terrible. And the thing is, I know you're saying there's not an argument for it, but I think the problem with Yuri is he's a bit too humble for his own good, and he says things that isn't necessarily true. Like I've heard him say it a few times. He goes, "Yeah, I was out there. I was out there. I was out there." He said it on about 3 other fights. And I think he's misunderstanding because English isn't his first language. Out and dazed. I think, yeah, I've been dazed. I don't think he was out. He didn't look like he was out to me. It looked like a case of balance. And, it felt like the way, if you got Alex on top of you and you're sort of going back, it's so easy to fall backwards and not be knocked out. And he seemed to be moving. He seemed to be defending himself. But I also can't be angry at it. Like you were saying, with Bobby Green and that finish there, I just wanted it to end. And the referees there, their job is to protect the fighters.
That's the main thing everyone's got to remember is these referees, they've got to make split decision moments and decision just to jump in. They're like less than a second to decide. And if they see someone, if they're so much as like their eyes roll back, they want to prevent them from taking any more damage.
Yeah.
The only thing that's annoying is when it's like, it's the main event and you think, oh, there was a lot riding on that. Yeah. A different style of one, which I won't touch on for long, is Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. That were coming into the third, fourth round, whichever. And the doctor stopped it. That was one of those, go get a coffee. He's not gone. He's not out. Yeah. It's just it looks like a smiley face on his eyebrow. Let this continue. That was such a lackluster finish, but there's so much pressure on the referee, and hindsight is a wonderful thing. Afterwards, you can see that someone wasn't out or it wasn't justified to finish the fight. But at the time, like you say, primary function and order is to protect the fighters if they cannot protect themselves.
Yeah, this is a matter of life and death. And yeah, fine, we might be upset that our favourite fighters had an early stoppage. But, that could literally save their lives. So for me, I don't get too upset over it. I'm like, yeah, at least he's not dead. That's how I think of it anyway. But sort of with the insanity of this division, I could see Alex Pereira getting clocked within his first fight, his first defense, should I say. Something wild could happen. We might not even get to see him defend his belt. He might break his ankle. He might tear his shoulder. there might be a thunderstorm, strikes his car. God knows what's going to happen with this division. It's literally insane. But I do think that's all we've got time for. Thank you for tuning in. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help us out.